Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just watching people pop into the attendees. If you could maybe just while we're waiting 1 or 2 minutes for a few more people to log in, if you could just pop in the chat where you're joining us from today, just to give an idea of who we have, that would be fantastic, and then we can get things underway. I'm seeing we've got some people in the US, in Oslo, Norway, um, from India, people are joining us. Seeing a few familiar names, so welcome everybody. Thank you for being here today. Another from the US, Cologne, Germany. So we've got a nice range of countries here today, which is always nice on a webinar. I think I'll kick things off. I'm sure people may still be trying to get themselves into Zoom. But yeah, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for taking the time. Um, I'll go ahead and introduce the session and then our very special guests who some of you may be aware are joining us today, some of you may not have been aware. So that might be a nice surprise for you. But so today's session, why in-country representation matters, is going to be sort of a very high-level look of what in-country representation is, and why universities might sort of be considering it as part of their outreach strategy, look at some of the advantages of the approach, and then we'll, of course, be answering any questions that might pop up. So my name's Jack, Senior Manager for University Relations here at UnivAssist, and I'm based in the UK. And I'm joined today, as I said, by two very special guests. So I'd like to welcome Vicki, who's Associate Director for International Admissions at Ohio University, and Luke, who's Director of Graduate Admissions at the Daniels College of Business, University of Denver. So thank you very much for being here, both of you. We really do appreciate you taking the time. And so the reason we've invited Vicki and Luke to be a part of this session is they actually both, Ohio University and the Daniels College of Business, they both have in-country representatives with UnivAssist. So we thought rather than you just hearing from us, it would be great to give you the perspective of some of our partners or universities that are using the service, so you can get the sort of insight from that perspective rather than just the provider side of things. So today's session, we'll keep it quite flexible. It'll be more an informal chat, I suppose. So I'll start off with a quick introduction to UnivAssist. I'm seeing some familiar names in the attendees list. I'm sure many of you are familiar with what we do. Some of you maybe not so much. So I'll give you a quick overview of what we do. And then we'll take a look at what in-country representation is. And again, maybe a similar situation. Some of you may already be involved in country. Some of you may have been exploring it a little bit already. And for some of you, it may be a very new concept. So we'll really give a high level overview just so you do have an idea of how in-country representation maybe varies, especially compared with using agencies. I know that the two can sometimes have crossed wires. So I want to make sure that the differences or some of the key differences are clear. And then we'll look at why in-country might be an option for universities and some of the key advantages. And throughout the session, I'll be referring to Vicki and Luke, just so you again get their perspective of the approach, or of having in-country as part of your outreach strategy. And then we'll finish off with just touching on how UnivAssist approaches in-country and maybe how we offer the service for those that might be looking to sort of take this route in their recruitment. So a little bit of background about UnivAssist. We support higher education institutions and high school counselors around the world for a range of programs which are aimed towards helping students find their right fit institutions and programs. To date, we've worked with 400 plus institutions from around the world. And this is, we support universities through a wide range of solutions. And just to touch on some of these, I won't spend long on this section because again, this isn't the the meaning of today's webinar, but I want to give you a bit of a background of what we do and where we're positioned. So as I'm sure many of you know of UnivAssist, one of the things we're best well known for is our student recruitment tours. These have been taking place since 2011. And each year we'll host around about 20 tours, visiting, again, 20 or so countries. And these are undergraduate focused recruitment tours where we'll visit a selection of carefully selected schools for either target country or countries, depending on the tour, where universities will have the opportunity to connect with students and counsellors through mini fairs, but also short presentations and workshops to really, get the most out of your time during the tour. We're quite a data-driven organization, so we're always looking at new potential countries to visit. So, for example, this autumn or this fall, for those of you in the US, we'll be introducing a tour to Central Asia. So that's quite an exciting time. We've been hosting tours of India and South Asia, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and then throughout the Americas and also Africa. So we're very much on a global scale in terms of our tours. And then to support these, we also offer online recruitment through what we refer to as Webby Fairs. And we also offer counsellor fly-in tours. And these give counsellors from around the world the opportunity to visit some institutions. So for example, this spring, we're bringing a group of around 15 counsellors to universities throughout the US, where they'll spend a couple of weeks visiting different campuses. So they get to experience what life could be like for one of their students. They'll gain that knowledge and insights, and then they're able to sort of pass that on to their students when they return home, not just for that current cohort, but obviously for years to come as well. We offer strategic counselling, and this is very much on a bespoke basis, whereas if a university is looking to maybe enter a market or maybe adapt their approach in certain markets, we're happy to sit down and look at what we can do to help you alter or support this change in strategy. We also offer marketing and printing services. This is for our newest vertical, which is called Reset Footprint. And Reset Footprint, they're able to help us produce various marketing materials for universities in a sustainable approach. And that includes also the shipping, and that's on a global scale. And then the final service we offer is in-country representation, which is what today's session is going to be focusing on. I'm seeing a couple more people have joined from the US, so thank you for joining and being here today. If anybody has any questions at all throughout the session, please do feel free to pop them in either the chat or the Q&A section, and I'll do my best to get to them either during the session or perhaps at the end when we have a little bit of time. I've skipped a couple of slides there. Okay, so what is in-country representation? And again, I'm sure that perhaps some of you are familiar with the service already, but for those that aren't, in-country representation means having a dedicated local representative based in the country of focus. Now, this maybe varies to the agency approach because this person represents your university 100%. Their time isn't split between yours and another institution or yours and multiple institutions. They are effectively an extension of your team, a full-time team member just housed elsewhere. So you really do have full control over what their responsibilities and roles might actually look like. So in terms of on-the-ground support, this is exactly what they do. They are your boots on the ground year-round, meaning you have a constant presence there. You're really able to immerse yourself within the country. Because of this, you're able to really develop deeper market insights, and you're able to benefit from your local knowledge that they gain from being immersed within that country. And one of the key services that they help with is the application and enrollment assistance. And so this would be, being the face of your university or your business school, whatever you might be, to students, parents, counselors, agencies. They are your face on the ground. So I don't want to be the only one talking, so I'd like to hand over to perhaps Vicki first. If you could maybe just give us a bit of your background in terms of how you've been using in-country representation, how long you've been using the approach.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Good day, everybody, wherever you're joining us from. Thanks so much. At Ohio University, we're now in our 5th year of working with an in-country representative in India. Prathamesh is Amazing. And I would say not just an extension of our team, but a true member of our team. At Ohio University, even though he's halfway around the world, um, having him on board made a significant difference in how we were doing in terms of ROI and in terms of applications and enrollments in India. For about 4 years prior, I had been going to India twice a year, and we'd just been seeing very incremental gains from that. But then once we brought Prathamesh on board, and got him onboarded, things just took off. And Ohio University now has really good brand recognition in India, which is not something that we really had before. We were often confused with another Ohio schooler of a large nature. So, that is something that's gone way past. And he's just a real professional in the field and has become very well regarded among the counselors that he works with. And he also takes care of our managing our Indian agent relationships as well. So he has, made himself known as a real part of the Ohio University team, wealth of knowledge, and we just treasure him so much and appreciate all that he lends to not only us at Ohio University, but he's already, he's giving back in the field as well. So it's been a real joy.
Thank you, Vicky. And so,
Mhm.
Luke, if you could perhaps give us a bit of your background as well and how long you've been using an in-country representative, maybe
Yeah,
what also made you decide to sort of take that approach.
yeah. Thanks, Vicki, and thanks everyone for attending. Uh, I am the director of graduate admissions at the College of Business here at the University of Denver. So we are focused just on business school students at the grad level. We, similar to Vicki, I had spent a lot of time traveling through India, mostly prior to COVID, on several circuits a year, and was just not generating the volume of interest that we would have desired. And so we needed something that was more robust and something that was to all of these points that Jack's well outlined here as value propositions. We weren't a recognized brand as the University of Denver, and a lot of people didn't know where we were located or where the state of Colorado was. So you can only do so much if some of you out there are recruiting throughout India, and no matter how many times you go back, when you leave, you are outside of the scope of that market and local knowledge and presence. You can't speak into terms of that time zone and that response time that is needed by students. We are here at a 12 and a half hour time difference between ourselves and India. Incidentally, we do have an in-country representative who ironically shares the same name as Vicki's rep, Prathamesh, but that's just by pure coincidence. And we've built a 2-year relationship. I've visited once since we've started that relationship, but that is a continual process. But I've scaled back a ton of my travel original obligations to be able to let Prathamesh handle things on the ground. And we talk almost every day through WhatsApp, but meet weekly to discuss where we're at and strategize together and identify the markets we want to be in.
Great. Thank you very much, Luke. I wanted to mention that some of these slides, they may have overlapping points. We may be back and forth a little bit between the what is, the whys, and the advantages. So I'll try to skip over those points when that happens. As I said, this is going to be quite an informal chat setup of a session. So we'll try not to cover the same point too many times. But I just wanted to sort of, and I guess this has been alluded to already, but by Luke and Vicky, is the why universities might consider taking an in-country representation approach. And so we have a few points here. Maybe Vicky and Luke can maybe develop on or add to if they have anything that's been missed here. But one of the factors that we found is there's a rising competition amongst universities for these students. More universities are traveling, spending time in country, and actually have some data on the next slide from a survey that we hosted or that we carried out earlier in the year, where we did find that there will be more universities spending more time on the road, or at least that was their plan at the time. So although more students may be traveling, there's also more universities now vying for those students. So it's really important to have that presence, I think, in country and be the face that people maybe recognize. And that's amongst students, maybe their families, and also counselors, and being that connection with agencies. Something else we found as well is that students and families tend to having increasing expectations, maybe, of the connection and service they've received from universities. Again, this is likely related to the competition that that's now in countries, especially those with large student mobility. They want to feel that personal connection, that sense of importance, I suppose, because obviously it's a very important decision for that family, for that student. So they want to really feel valued. And as I believe Luke it was that alluded to, with the time zone issues, being able to communicate either by message, email, or over the phone with students and families and other stakeholders, it makes things much more streamlined, and it gives your university that real sense of immersion within the country as being a real option and real active presence there for them. And that kind of continues to the school and partner engagement point. We found that high schools and agencies and other stakeholders, they tend to prefer or enjoy at least working with locally based representatives. Again, time zones play a big part here, and as well as that communication, not just linguistically, but also maybe culturally, to be able to communicate on the same sort of field that they're used to. It makes them very much more comfortable. And then finally, it gives you the opportunity to have a more data-driven approach to recruitment. You gain those real-time insights on market shifts, and maybe if there's any changes in student preferences, if there's any new programs or new cities that are worth maybe exploring a little bit more. You get that sense of immersion and sense of live data, rather than having to wait for maybe annual reports that might be produced. So I think these are some of the reasons that universities might consider using the in-country approach. I don't know if Vicki or Luke, if you'd like to add anything there that we haven't touched upon.
I can just expand on the data-driven recruitment a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, one of the things that we've really been able to do by having a team member in India is go beyond the tier 1 cities, which are fairly saturated at this point, and really start exploring the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and making those our primary markets, and really making a name for ourselves in those places. So that's been a really helpful thing, because when I was just going myself, there's only so many cities I could hit during the time that I was in country. And, now we are able to explore the whole country, much more efficiently and effectively.
Thank you, Vicki. So one question did you want to add anything, Luke? I just saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to add, well, I don't know about you all, but I'm definitely in an environment where budget is always being looked over very carefully. I would say this is actually a model that's friendly to your budgetary goals. It's not going to compete with it. It's actually probably going to be more favorable. If you just look at maybe some of your line items of travel and cost of recruitment from purely the airfare and hotels, like a lot of that can be streamlined and more efficient, and your money can go a much longer way if you utilize this model.
Perfect, thank you. So I think if we move on to the next slide, which we will have already, so this one, yes, some of the data I mentioned, we found that 49% of institutions were actually expecting to travel more than they have been the previous year. I know this is kind of a little change in topic, going back a little bit, but I just wanted to allude to this data that we have. And also we found that the number of trips that universities on average were planning was up a couple to 9 from 7 the year before. So yeah, moving on to the key advantages, or some of the advantages. We have definitely touched on some of these. For example, the wider geographic reach. I think it was Vicki mentioned you're able to now, especially in India, reach more of the tier 2 cities. Of course, in country, whilst this is maybe where UnivAssist's kind of history is, it's not only a service that should be related to India. This could also be a very effective approach in maybe sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, Latin America, or Southeast Asia. Anywhere where you're seeing a lot of student movement and you want to have a more active presence. India tends to be the focus here, especially because it has become such a key market for almost every university, I suppose, and there are so many cities that are emerging. It's maybe a dangerous game to not have any touch points with them, especially with the metros becoming ever more competitive, with more universities hitting those. So yeah, just to quickly run through some of these again. I know that we have already touched on some of them, but you're able to forge very stronger relationships and long-term connections with schools or universities, depending on how you're using your representative. And this is something else I wanted to touch on as well. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So Luke, I believe, is only looking for example, postgraduate students through their representative. And Vicki, I'm not sure if you're only undergrad or undergrad and postgrad, but it's definitely, university by university, each would have their own approach. And that's absolutely the advantage of having an in-country representative, is because they are a member of your team. They can, you set their goals, you set their remit, even their region. They don't have to focus purely on that single country. I think some of our representatives, although they're based in India, have traveled everywhere from Japan to the Middle East and even, I think, recently Africa. So they really do become a member of your team, and you can, have them undertake tasks as and when you see fit. Another aspect I think we did touch on was the increased event participation. So rather than, traveling to India or wherever it might be, on a trip where you maybe have 1 or 2 weeks, a semester, or even a year, and you'll maybe visit 4 or 5 cities, likely the larger cities. You're able to attend events in many more locations throughout the full year. Sometimes you'll meet the same students, which is great. It reinforces your brand. Other times you will be able to attend more bespoke or more smaller events, where it might not be possible to travel for a couple of days from the US, from Europe, wherever you might be. So it really gives you the opportunity to increase the number and variety of events that you are joining. I thought I would also, rather than just focusing on these advantages, as I know we have touched on them, if I could maybe ask Luke, if there's anything in particular you like about the approach, and if you've noticed any differences in the number of applications and enrollments, perhaps since using an in-country representative. I know you're a little bit newer, or your university is a little bit newer to in-country, so maybe the instant impact is maybe a bit more dramatic.
Yeah, we're a little more than 2 years, I believe, or around the 2-year threshold. I'd say you do need to give yourself a 3 to 5 year kind of time frame to really start to see the full results. So we're probably in process. We've already seen an immediate results in our last fall cycle intake. So dating back to September for us of 2024, and we're looking ahead with some broader goals for this next fall. But we have the momentum and the strategy fully in place now. So it does take a little bit of time, especially very much depends when you enter into this relationship and start training and building those relationships with your representative, and then helping them understand. It is very collaborative, I will say, and the strategy is co-created, and I would say you should prefer it that way, with the knowledge that's coming to the table, to leverage, to look at your data, compare that to where your current success is and where you can expand. There's some trial and error there as well, but for us, we've already seen immediate success in this fall, and we're looking to triple or quadruple that for this upcoming fall. So it's certainly incremental, and we view it as initially as a 3-year commitment for us to just get the ball rolling and seeing where we're going. And I'm sure Vicki, being 5 years in, has much more she could say to the successes she's probably seeing in that respect. But this is a long-term strategy, and we are very excited by that respect. And like I had mentioned, it is just myself at the business school that's doing this from a graduate level, but it's already getting the ears and attention of others on campus who don't have this model in place. We're now kind of leaning into what we're doing over here. So, so I think that's also telling in this respect.
Sure. Thank you very much, Luke. Vicki, I was hoping to ask, obviously Luke then mentioned about it being sort of a collaborative effort. And what UnivAssist tries to do was not just provide the person, but we want to, you know, help improve your outreach and your impact within not just India, but the region you're looking at. So I was wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with any of the strategic consulting that's been provided or that we are able to sort of support you with, and any data analysis we share.
Yeah, working with KIC UnivAssist is really invaluable in terms of being able to collect and analyze data. I think I saw Swaraj jump on the call here, and he is a data genius. And so in addition to having that on the ground representation, we also have access to a real wealth of knowledge and data that KIC UnivAssist collects on a regular basis, you know, through surveys that they do in the field and things like that, and all the, you know, keeping an eye on all of the different demographic factors that are having an impact anywhere in the world. So we've really come to rely quite heavily on KIC's services when it comes to data and knowledge of particular markets, not just India, but other markets as well.
Thank you, Vicki. I really think that was the main sort of the bulk of the, I guess, what is in country, the advantages. I did want to ask maybe Vicki and Luke, if you have any advice or tips maybe for those who might be considering taking an in-country approach.
Sure. As I said earlier, Prathamesh is definitely part of our team, and I think that is the way that you need to approach this, that the person that you bring on board is not just kind of an outlier, but you really need to bring them into the fold as much as possible in terms of onboarding and understanding of the university's policies, procedures, everything that goes on with whatever types of admission program they're working with. I also honestly believe in being able to bring your representative to campus, you know, at least it may be a little while in after you've started onboarding them, but to have an opportunity to see and experience campus for themselves, meet the people on campus, talk to academic advisors. You know, they know all the questions that they're getting asked by the students and by the parents. And so they can then have firsthand knowledge of this information as opposed to just going through whomever their supervisor is in that case. So yeah, and Prathamesh has been welcomed into our whole undergraduate admissions family very, very much so. And so I think that's a really key piece of making sure that it's successful. And, you know, like Luke was saying as well, making sure that the communications are regular and effective, and that you can touch base on a very regular basis to make sure that the strategies are moving forward the way that you intend them to.
Thank you, Vicki. Luke, would you have any advice or tips?
Yeah, to Vicki's point, you are effectively really adding another FTE to your team and just in a different manner. And so you should treat it as such and approach it in that manner. Usually your office is going to be checking on the bandwidth of being able to onboard and train and regularly work with an in-country representative, and that will create some challenges probably to your current traditional schedule and routine, especially if you have to assess your time zone and where that in-country representative is located and how that relates to you. I know for me, just an oddity is that when we move into daylight savings, it heavily disrupts my routine time with Prathamesh because It literally jeopardizes for a stretch of time the window between my waking hours and my children's waking hours and getting them to school. And so there's just interesting things like that you probably aren't going to be thinking about right now, but you need to consider, but are part of the investment that you're making and why you're having in-country representation. And so any of the difficulties and challenges you are facing with just how to manage that relationship, you should first consider what those challenges will be, but realize that that's the value you're adding to this, because if it's hard, if you're finding it's very difficult to kind of find the meaningful hours of the day to make those communications, just realize how much more difficult it is for you and your entire team to reach that population of students you're trying to recruit if you're already seeing some of those challenges apparent. Obviously, we could not reach Indian students in the way, in the manner that our in-country representative could. And so that's why you're investing in this strategy. So you do have to take into account some of the challenges that you're going to have to realize, and ways that you might have to think differently and creatively about your own working hours and how you communicate. But you set expectations together. You set some good boundaries for each other to be able to work collaboratively and independently and honor each other's realities in two different parts of the world. But then that's how you work together and strengthen what this is all about. So I would just say, take inventory, know that yes, you are bringing on something unique, and don't be surprised all of a sudden if you have for me, a 6 a.m. meeting. But that's part of what you're signing up for here, because that's what makes the most sense for where you're at. But once you realize those cost benefits associated, you realize that this is really the advantages that you gain with having this model in place.
Sure, thank you so much, Luke. We've had a question come in actually relating to basically the duration that a representative may be with a university. And now, for example, I know that Vicki and Prathamesh, he's been representing you for 5 years. Is that correct? The full time?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. And so I think in general, many of our representatives do remain with the university for multiple years. I'm not sure exactly what the average is, but I am sure that it's not, a quick intro and training and then they'll look to move on, as the question kind of maybe asks if there is an issue about that. I think it's about making them feel valued and part of the team. And as I guess what could happen really with many roles is, is there an opportunity to evolve and develop within it as well? So as far as I'm aware, within our team, this hasn't been an issue, and the vast majority of the representatives have remained in their role for multiple years at a time. We don't have a particularly high turnover. It's not an issue that's really arisen that we are constantly having to find somebody new. So yeah, I guess as long as they are feeling a valued member of the team and are enjoying the role, they should stay in that position as long as there's some progression possible of sorts for them.
Can I jump in real quick, Jack?
Please,
I
yes.
think one of the other advantages that KIC UnivAssist provides with their in-country representatives is a very healthy and vibrant office life in country with the other representatives that are there. So if my Prathamesh, as I said, he's in year 5 now. He also, in addition to what he does for us, he provides mentorship for some of the newer folks that are just coming on board. So there are a lot of different ways, in addition to expanding territories or things like that, where you can really give them a sense of worth, in addition to making sure that they feel like a true member of your team. And honestly, I see a lot more turnover on the domestic side of things in admissions than I have seen with, what I've experienced having an in-country representative.
Thank you, Vicki. And I see that Suraj has messaged as well, just to develop on what we do. And we try and, in collaboration with the university, we try and increase their geographic responsibility to help keep them engaged. And look to offer different professional development opportunities. So I hope that kind of maybe alleviates any concerns you might have had on that. But if there are any other questions at all, please do feel free to pop them in the chat or the Q&A. And so just finally, I guess we have already now touched on this. Thank you, Vicki. I wanted to touch on UnivAssist's approach to in-country. Here's a sort of, just to give you an idea, we're currently working with 18 institutions who have a total of 19 representatives. So one of our partners does have 2 representatives. And so we do have a very busy office, although sometimes with people being on the road all the time, sometimes it can be quiet. But in general, there's a very healthy environment there. There's a lot of synergy going on, a lot of knowledge sharing, which is one of the advantages of having this centralized working space. Each university or each representative would have their own dedicated workspace, which is quite often decorated with the university brochures and flyers and pennants. So it becomes an office overseas really for the university. And again, just to touch on our approach, just to reiterate, it's different to an agency approach in that it is your own individual or individuals representing your university, depending on how many you would like to sort of have in place to provide your year-round presence. One really key point on that is this isn't a commission-based agreement. It's a fixed fee for the year or for the duration of the contract annually. And it's not, there's absolutely no commission-based payments towards UnivAssist or to the representative. There's a fixed salary. So everything is really focusing on providing the most, I guess, efficient and ethical is the word I was looking for, representation of the university. We want them to find the right profile of student. It's not just about the numbers. Obviously, numbers are key. But it's also about finding the right fit, which is, I think, key for sort of the long-term health of your approach in the country. And so we do provide the turnkey solution, which is compliant with all the HR and legal and tax regulations within country. So there's no need to worry there. There's no sort of extra setup. And we provide quite a wide range of administrative support within the office. So as I said, each representative has their own working space, but then there's also access to conference rooms, which can be used for either a quieter video call, or if you want to welcome agents or partners, or even students for a face-to-face meeting, there's access to conference rooms. And then we have IT support, which can be used at busy times for data processing, and also support in setting up webinars and online events. And then we'll also be able to provide travel support as well. So we work with a range of travel partners, which we have been doing for many, many years, who offer preferential rates and are really quick and responsive, so they can help us put together trips for your representative very efficiently and at any time, really. And on that note as well of arranging travel and trips, obviously this person is not based at the office, so there's a little bit of disconnect in a way, no matter how often you're in touch. So we do have a line manager essentially who is based in India, and what they do is they do help oversee your representative. So obviously you're their, I guess, direct manager, you're their director, but our in-country manager will help to oversee their travel arrangements, just ensuring that budget is being spent effectively. So if they may be traveling to another city to visit a single agent, she'll look to find ways that maybe to maximize that trip by adding in more visits rather than traveling the night before, traveling the morning of. So really it's just getting more from each trip for the least amount of budget. And that's true with sort of weekly reports as well. So we keep an eye on what your representative has been doing in terms of outreach and events and leads contacted. So we do engage in the reporting side of things as well to make sure things are running as they should be. Going back to other services that UnivAssist offers, obviously we're very much immersed, especially in the undergraduate side of student recruitment, not just in India, but around the world. We've worked with over, I believe, 1,000 high schools in different countries. But within India, we're incredibly well established. And we also have very close connections with the IC3 movement, which again helps us gain that extra bit of market reliance. That's not the word I'm looking for, but, market presence. So we are very well known in the industry, and that network is accessible to the representatives. Should undergraduate especially be something that your institution is looking for. And again, going back to the strategic support side of things, we'll sit down with you annually to review what the year ahead might look like, what your goals are, how things will be approached. And then we'll also review that throughout the year as well to see maybe what's working, what's not working, and make adjustments as and when needed. Because again, we're not just providing you the person, we want to provide you the full support so that you're getting the most out of the service. But I think that's all from me, at least. I don't know if Vicki or Luke, sorry to put you on the spot, if there's anything you would like to add before we do take any questions and answers.
I could throw in one more thing about UnivAssist's approach, and that is that I have found them to be very, very good at matching your representative to your institution. I think a lot of care is taken to make sure that they find someone who can really relate to the university's values and character and things like that. So I think that's another reason that turnover is probably not as high as it might be in some other companies that you might set up with, just because the match is taken very seriously. So it's not just about finding the match for our students, but it's finding the match for the representative as well.
Thank you, Vicki. And yes, just on that point, we have a quite in-depth recruitment process when it comes to finding these representatives. So we have several channels to seek potential candidates, but then they go through, I believe it's 5 stages of interviews, beginning with our HR team, to then another in-country manager, through to our senior leadership. And this will include presentations and other tasks as well, just to ensure that the person is a suitable fit. And then the final stage would be the representative we maybe put forward, or representatives would then meet with the university. So the university would always have the final say on who's put in place, but it is quite a rigorous process to make sure we're finding suitable or more than suitable candidates for the role. And the general timeline tends to be about 8 weeks. So from the moment the contract's signed to the moment the person is in place, including their notice period at the current employer, tends to be about 8 weeks or so. And we would generally find people that have experience within the education industry as well, usually 2, 3, 4 years or so, just so that they're not starting from scratch. And I've seen a question from Jennifer here on the range of cost. And this can vary, I suppose, depending on the seniority of the person that you are looking for, or exactly what their tasks might be. But to give you sort of a rough range, it would be from around about, in USD, around about $48,000 to approximately 55 for year 1, to give you an approximate range.
Jack, I was just going to add one more thing for you.
Sure.
Here, I think this is also an investment that brings more support and continuity to your students that are coming to campus. We are focused on delivering, the best quality education to our students, and this having a representative in country gives them the confidence through the entire process. Well, when my students arrived here through this strategy with utilizing the in-country representation, they would speak often about the support and confidence and ability of the in-country representative, Prathamesh, to really address some anxieties, some concerns along the way. There's a whole lot of steps in this process for an international student to get here, and a lot of them are outside of the scope of your view and responsibility and control. Getting ready for an interview and getting prepared for packing and coming here. These are things that are anxieties that we don't often look at from our side of the fence that are coming for these students in their relocation. And an in-country representative can give some real-time advice, can be giving them assurance and confidence along the way, and And even somebody that checks in on when they're flying here is still reaching out to them to say, hey, is everything going all right? Did you find campus? And then of course they connected to us and we had our points of contact, but having someone from home reaching out and saying that and doing that will help with your yield. It'll help with the confidence that students will get when they reach here. And we haven't had any of our students that have come through this process leave when they got here. So I think that's something to think about.
Great, thank you, Luke. Thank you for the input there. We had another question from Jennifer. Who pays for the representatives' travel and event participation? Great question, Jennifer. And that would be the university. That isn't included in the annual fee. And obviously this would vary university to university, depending on the level of or the amount of event participation you're looking to do, how active you are in terms of attending events, and also the geographic area your representative would be covering. So that is on top of the retainer fee, the budget and general marketing costs are in addition to that. And again, it does vary from university to university, depending on what your approach would be.
The thing to keep in mind, I think, there is that those are expenses you would have if you didn't have an in-country representative, in terms of the travel for having a staff person go from the United States or from another country. You would still need the materials, all of those kinds of things. So it still ends up being a much more cost-effective way to handle things.
Thank you, Vicki, for your input as well. Another question from Laura. Where do your in-country reps' responsibilities end and your admission counselors start in student enrollment pipeline? I guess essentially they are a member of your team. So this is really up to you exactly what their roles are. Vicki, Luke, I'm not sure exactly how both of your prep meshes are involved in the pipeline from start to finish. I don't know if you could maybe give some insight onto that one, but it's really up to you as a university what your representative is responsible for.
Yeah, we have significant overlap. It's not that much different than asking the same question inside your own office. Where does one admissions counselor's responsibility end and the other start, or how you're connecting them to other units on campus. You do want to develop a streamlined process, but there's so much overlap in this that having the in-country representative always a part of the support for these students that they are recruiting is important, but these students are touching our admissions counselors directly through the whole routine processes we use for any student apart from what Prothemish is recruiting. So you definitely have to think about the system. You have to train your team into that. But I wouldn't say there's a clear start stop. There's just a clear overlap of support.
Sure. Thank you, Luke. I hope that helps, Laura. Jennifer, does each university give the rep a university business card, email? Yes. I've clicked something to answer live. I'm not sure if it's recording or what's happening now, but yes. Again, this representative is a member of your team. So they are representing your university. So they would receive university credentials, so email, generally, access to the CRM system. I know that's a slightly different topic. The question has now disappeared. Okay, thank you, Kate. The question has now disappeared, but yes, they'll receive the business card because, again, sometimes schools, they prefer, in some cases, maybe their students to connect directly with university representatives rather than agencies. So as they are a member of your team, yes, they would receive university materials like business cards, university phone number, for example, all of that side of things. Do we have any more questions at all? And again, I know this has been a fairly broad session because again, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. If anybody is, interested in having a further chat about in country, we'd be very happy to set up a call and sort of understand what your needs might look like, what your priorities would be, and maybe sort of look at how UnivAssist might be able to help you to achieve those and how we can support you.